Hello, I'm Tim Shoebridge. Welcome to this video. Just a quick video, well, quick by my standards, I think. A quick video on this wonderful synthesizer here behind me. It's the third wave from Groove Synthesis. It's on loan. It's still on loan. They're very, very patient with me. I haven't had any time to do videos with it. I did a short video a little while ago just going through some of the stock wavetables so you can hear what they sound like. In this video, what I thought I'd do is to deconstruct a patch. For me personally, one of the best ways to find out all of the sort of like the ways of using a synthesizer, all its capabilities, is to actually deconstruct one of the factory presets. I'm not going to deconstruct a factory preset. I'm going to deconstruct a preset that I created myself, and show you basically how it's put together. Now, a word of warning, my patches generally aren't earth-shattering. I'm not creating patches in order to sell them to you. I'm not creating patches in order to sell the instrument either. I'm creating patches that are quite subtle, quite sort of like middle of the road, because they're sounds that I then fit into my own musical recordings. So I'm going to pick one of those patches on the third wave and deconstruct it for you, show you basically how it's put together, so you can basically get a good idea of the capabilities of the synthesizer. So that's what's coming up in this video. I do hope you enjoy it. Patch deconstruction, third wave from Groove Synthesis. Thanks very much for watching. Right, let's have a look at the patch. Let's deconstruct this patch. It sounds like this. So we've clearly got two things going on. We've got a kind of a piano-like sound, and then we've got a kind of a swell. And you can see over here on the right hand side in the multi-part section, because this is a 4-part multi-timbral synthesizer, we've got two of the buttons lit. The one that's flashing means that that's the one that we're currently controlling, playing around with the controls, the dials and the buttons. So we've got two of them going on. I'm going to turn off part number 2, so we just listen to part number 1 and we get this. No swell at all. It's just a very nice piano-like sound. And if we disable it and just listen to part number 2, well, that's the swell. So let's have a listen to that piano sound again and figure out how to create it. It's very, very simple how to create it actually, and I do use it in a lot of my patches. So there's clearly a lot of effects going on. There are two effects engines and we've got both of them switched on. You can see by these lights. The bottom one is set to a reverb, a concert hall reverb, and the top one is set to a bucket brigade delay emulation. These are both digital effects. So let's listen to the delay effect. And the reverb on its own. There are a few different reverbs. This concert hall really sounds very nice. Let's got a long reverb time, and it's got like a tone control, so this goes all the way up to 255, and it's like a tone control, so the higher up you go with this cutoff, the higher the frequencies are that it's picking out. You can just hear them ringing out there, the higher frequencies. If we go down to 128, that's in the middle, so we're hearing all frequencies at 128. And then the further we turn it down, the sort of like the lower the frequencies that we're allowing to get through. So we get a much more kind of mellow. Let's go down even further, say 32, something like that. It's a bit darker down there. Or did I have it? I had it about 64, didn't I? So that's the two effects. And this is the sound without. It's definitely got a kind of a Fender Rhodes feel to it, doesn't it? But it's also got an acoustic piano kind of feel, which is interesting. It's kind of a bit of a melding between electric piano and acoustic piano. So, how do we create that sound? It's very, very simple. I've just got one of the three oscillators being played here. The others are all at level 0. Just oscillator 1, that's all we're listening to. And we are using a wavetable here, which is in location U32, so it's one of these really high resolution wavetables. But there's no modulation going on here. I'm not scanning through it at all. I'm just basically playing the very first waveform in that table, and we can see the wavetable by clicking on this button here, and those are the 64 waveforms, and we're just listening to the very first one. If I use this wave offset control here, we can sort of manually scan through and listen to the waveforms. But before we do that, let's talk about the envelopes, because there's clearly envelopes in play here, because the sound is dying away like a regular piano. So I've got an amplitude envelope set with 0 sustain. It looks like that. It's just a simple decay. So let's turn up the sustain all the way. So now we get this. I've also got a little bit of low pass filter going on as well. The cutoff is set to about 1 o'clock. 80 is the value. So I've got a little bit of cutoff set and a little bit of envelope amount set. So again, the envelope has got no sustain. It's got a decay. It's a little bit quicker than the amplitude envelope decay. So let's turn that sustain up. Now we're starting to hear the raw waveform. And let's turn cutoff all the way up to maximum. There's no resonance, no saturation. That is the raw waveform that we're listening to. So now let's go and scan through that wavetable and listen to what it's all about. So as you can see there, it's a constantly evolving waveform in this wavetable, and it sounds a little bit like a filter sweep going on there. There's a little bit of filtration here, which opens up with resonance. To this point. So let's put my amplitude envelope back on. And let's put the filter back on. Sounds nice, doesn't it? But this is the most realistic piano sound. So that's part number one. Let's listen to the swell part now, part number two. So with this swell, again, we've got effects, and I'm using the same effects. I'm using the Bucket Brigade delay, which we can turn off, and the reverb, which we'll turn off. Concert hall again. So there's clearly an envelope generator or two going on there. Slow attack and slow decay. Let's look at the amplitude envelope. It is just a decay going on there with the amplitude envelope. So it's got to be the filter envelope that's causing it to come in and out like that. Let's have a look at it. And there you go. You'll notice for me to switch between the different screens that show the parameters of the synthesizer, I have to touch one of the controls. I mean, it's great that whenever you touch a control, you get a context of what you're changing. So I go over here and play with oscillator number 3 level, and it jumps to oscillator 3, and I can see what's going on there. Same with oscillator number 2, etc. Coming back to the envelope. It's great that it flicks between them, but the trouble is, if you just want to see what the values are, you have to play with one of the controls to show it. And this is one of my main criticisms of the third wave. It's not it's not a 100% mature product. It's Groove Synthesis's first synth, and I'd like to see a sort of a menu system here. I know, most people don't like menu systems, but it would be really nice to have a way of just going in and saying, show me what the filter settings are, take me to this page please, so I can see the envelope, rather than having to twiddle with knobs and press buttons, because it's not always clear as to whether you're interfering with your patch and not knowing it. For example, if I change the sustain, you'll see there immediately that there's a zero, a little tiny zero appears above sustain to show me what the last saved value was. So I can always see what it was before I fiddled with it. But there are some of these controls that don't show you their original value. The levels on the oscillators, for example, if I play around with the level of oscillator number 3, you can see it's down in there. It's not one of these main 4 parameters, and it doesn't tell me what the original level was. So I've no idea now what it was before I fiddled with it. So those kinds of things I think I'd like to see improved with the third wave. On the Moog 1, for example, they have a little tiny triangular button in the corner of every section on their front panel. You can just press it and go and see exactly what all the parameters are in the menu system. I think that's brilliant. Clearly Groove Synthesis are not going to be able to add that to this synth because that's a hardware change, but I'm hoping that they can maybe improve the menu system, give us some kind of overall menu system so that I can go in there and look at the parameters without having to fiddle around with the controls. Anyway, where were we? We're going to look at the filter envelope. As you can see there, it's a very slow attack, slow decay to give us this swell. You can also hear there's a modulation going on, so let's have a look at what's going on there. Let's go into the modulation matrix, and we can quickly scroll through here and see what modulation settings we've got set. You can see there LFO number 1, the destination is oscillator all, so all oscillators, the frequency of all oscillators, and the amount is very small, just number 2 for a little bit of vibrato. Are there any other modulations set here? There's one more, which is the mod wheel, and that is increasing the amount of LFO number 4 amount. But I didn't see LFO number 4 doing anything, actually, so no, that's not being used. We could easily zero that. I must have been playing around doing something earlier with that. So that's the only modulation, is a little bit of vibrato using LFO number 1. So let's have a look at LFO number 1, and that's easy to do. We just press the button, we can see that it's lit up, and here we can see frequency of 90 and amount of 2. The frequency isn't in hertz, it's just a value going up to 255. As you can see there, in small font above it, 90, it's showing me what the value was before I mucked about with it, which is nice to know. Set it back. So, what actually are we hearing in terms of waveform? So this is where I have to fiddle around with the oscillators to see what's going on. So I'm changing the pitch because that's one of the values where I can see what the original value was. So we're not using oscillator number 3. We've actually got now a button we can step through the 3 oscillators, which is handy now. So we're not using oscillator number 3. We've got oscillator number 1 with 100% level. So we're only using oscillator number 1. And here we're using a wavetable. Again, it's one of these high definition wavetables. U21, it's called 5-osc comb. So that's the waveform. Are we modulating it or scanning through it at all? There weren't any modulations in the mod matrix that were changing the wave offset, but we may well be using the wave envelope section up here, and we are, because it's on oscillator number 1. So we can look at oscillator number 1, and you can see there that we've got a long attack and a long decay on this particular wave envelope, and it's an envelope that's dedicated to modulating the wave offset, scanning through the wavetable. So we basically start at the beginning, scan through to the end, and then back again. And if we look at the values and go to miscellaneous, there is a parameter there called loop, and loop is on. So basically what we're doing is we're using this wave envelope as an LFO, a triangle wave shape LFO. We're scanning backwards and forwards through this wavetable. That's why you can hear it evolving like that. It does sound better with effects on though.